Okay, Prep 2. Hi, how are you today? Let's start at Chapter 2. In Chapter 2, we have some new vocabulary. We have ink. Ink is something used for writing. It was used from all time ago. Foolish. Content. Content means happy and satisfied. Lock. Lock. Lock to close something. Violin. It's a musical instrument. Walking stick. Walking stick. Knock on. Knee, unusual, receive, landlord, as I told you before, means owner of a place, mystery, something we cannot understand or explain, soul, concert, music party or musical party, trousers. Now we have some questions. What did Mr. Wilson buy? Mr. Wilson, when he got the job in the Red-Headed League, he bought a pen, some ink, and some paper. What was his opinion about the job? It seemed foolish to copy an encyclopedia. We said that Mr. Wilson needed money. He accepted the job, but he thought that it was so foolish to copy only from an encyclopedia. Okay, why was Mr. Wilson surprised? Because Mr. Ross was waiting for him at the office. Okay, we said before in chapter 1 that Mr. Wilson, when he went to meet the manager, Mr. Ross, he made him enter quickly and not to wait in the line outside. When did Mr. Wilson go home? He went home at 2 o'clock. When did Mr. Wilson receive his pay? At the end of the week. How much pay did he receive? He received $4, okay, or pound sterling. Okay, how did Mr. Wilson find the work? He thought that it was so easy and he was content. Content means happy, happy with the money and the easy job. How long did Mr. Wilson work at the Red-Headed League? He worked at the Red-Headed League for 8 weeks. After that, the office was closed. What did the landlord tell Mr. Wilson about the Red-Headed League? He didn't know Mr. Ross or the Red-Headed League. And from that reason, Mr. Wilson decided to visit, can you remember, Sherlock Holmes. What did Mr. Wilson ask Holmes to do? He asked him to solve the mystery. Mr. Wilson wanted to know why they did that, why they had the company of the Red-Headed League, why he was assigned to work, and why they closed suddenly. Who did Holmes ask Wilson about? He asked him about his assistant, Mr. Spaulding. Where were Holmes and Watson going? They were going to a violin concert. What could they go past? They could go past Mr. Wilson's shop. Go past means to walk beside. How did Mr. Holmes hit the ground? He walked up to the shop and hit the ground with his walking stick. What was Dr. Watson's opinion about Mr. Holmes' answer to his question? He thought that it was very unusual answer. Thank you. Okay, Prep 2. Let's start our chapter 3. We said last time that Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson went to attend a violin concert. Okay, after the concert, Sherlock Holmes told Dr. Watson that he had to see someone before he went home. Who was the person that he wanted to see? Was the most important policeman in London. His name is Peter Jones. Why he wanted to see the policeman? Because there will be a crime tonight. That night that he is speaking about. And then they will meet another man called Mr. Merryweather. Who was Mr. Merryweather? Was the manager of the bank behind Mr. Wilson's shop. Okay, the 4 men got into 2 taxis while they were traveling. Holmes told Dr. Watson that Merryweather was the manager of the bank behind Mr. Wilson's shop. The taxis were taking them to Mr. Merryweather's bank. When they arrived, Mr. Merryweather took them into the bank and down the cellar. What is the cellar? Cellar is the floor under the first floor. What was inside it? It was dark and there were a lot of large boxes. Inside these boxes, there was some of gold. Okay, all thieves are interested in the gold in the boxes in the cellar. Merryweather said it was unusual to have so much gold in one bank and they decided to move it, but they were worried. Okay, Holmes explained that the thieves were going to come into the cellar under the ground from Mr. Wilson's shop and that they were waiting for the famous thief to appear. Who was the famous thief? John Clay. Okay, and after a while, after waiting silently, there was a square stone in the ground started to move. Suddenly they saw a hand. The hand slowly moved the stone up and to the right. Then a young man climbed out. He came out from the hole and into the cellar. The young man stood up. Holmes quickly grabbed his arm. It was John Clay. Now Sherlock Holmes told him, John Clay, your red-headed idea was a good one, but we have caught you. Okay, Prep 2. Let's end the red-headed league. Chapter 4. We have some new vocabulary. We have explain, find out means discover, dirty means not clean, deduce means to guess, a tunnel, trousers, dig, a half, and reply. Let's know what happened. Who did Mr. Holmes explain the crime to? Mr. Holmes explained the crime to Dr. Watson. We said in chapter 3 that Holmes grabbed the arm of a thief. He called him John Clay. Who turned it to be John Clay? John Clay was the famous thief who was hiding his identity with the name Spaulding. Remember the assistant of Mr. Wilson? The assistant with the famous thief John Clay. How did John Clay have the idea for the Red-Headed League? He had this idea from his friend Mr. Ross, who had red hair. What was Holmes' opinion of the job offered to Mr. Wilson? He saw it was too foolish to be a real job. Why did Clay and Ross invented the job? To make Mr. Wilson be out of his shop. Where did Mr. Spaulding used to work? He used to work in the cellar. All of that time, Spaulding, when he offered the advert for Mr. Wilson, he wanted him to be out of the shop for some hours to dig a tunnel. Dig a tunnel from Mr. Wilson's shop down in the cellar to the bank to steal the gold. What was John Clay digging? He was digging a tunnel. How did Holmes know that Clay was digging a tunnel? Remember in chapter 2 that when he knocked at the door of the shop and John Clay opened for him, or Spaulding as we know him, okay, he found that his trousers were dirty and he had holes on the knees of his trousers, which means he was kneeling down a lot and digging into the ground. When were they digging the tunnel? While Mr. Wilson was out of the shop. And this proved why they asked Mr. Wilson not to leave the office in the Red-Headed League at all, only leave at 2 o'clock. Why were they digging a tunnel? To take the gold from the bank. Where was the bank? The bank was behind Mr. Wilson's shop. When was the Red-Headed League closed? When the thieves finished digging the tunnel. When did they plan to take the gold? On Saturday. Now Prep 2. Why did thieves have chosen Saturday night to have a day and have to escape before the bank opened on Monday? How did Dr. Watson praise Mr. Holmes? He told him, well done. Now we have some general questions, but what most important thing to know from this novel? That the mystery was solved by Sherlock Holmes because he was very clever in observation and deduction. This is something to know. The second thing, when he looked at the knees of the trousers of Spaulding, he knew that he was digging a tunnel down from the cellar from Mr. Wilson's shop to the bank to steal the gold. Okay? And why he suspected Mr. Spaulding? Because when he asked Mr. Wilson about his assistant Spaulding, he told him that many hours he was working down in the cellar. Okay, so why the assistant was working mainly in the cellar? Because he was digging a tunnel. How did Mr. Spaulding have the idea of the Red-Headed League? From his friend Duncan Gross, who has got a red hair. So the whole idea of a job for a person with red hair was a foolish one, but it was for a purpose to steal the bank, because the bank for the first time was having a lot of amounts of gold inside the boxes.